consisted of the chief of police calling Henman in despair over some dastardly new crime, Henman summoning Chicken, the two racing after the criminal in hot pursuit, afforded by the Henmobile, and finally the eventual capture of the criminals through the use of some gadget or trickery. Stories sometimes ended with the criminal confessing, "You outwitted me." For example, when Weatherman sought to escape by surrounding Henman and Chicken with clouds, but was caught nevertheless, Henman was asked how he had dealt with the clouds, and he responded, "We reasoned with them." Now, if this sounds familiar, vaguely familiar, you are dating yourselves, because they recall the 1960s Batman and Robin TV series. But Eugene actually did a lot more than adapt a particular narrative form and spoof the characters. His language was sometimes derived from Dr. Seuss picture books, and his cartoon style was clearly derived from Hanna-Barbera cartoons. In short, Eugene's narratives are an amalgam of 4 different cultural forms: a TV drama series, Dr. Seuss books, TV cartoons, and all in a conventional comic strip format. And yet there is still more. While the Batman and Robin TV series typically restored order through comic-style violence, Eugene always resolved conflict with the use of some gadget or with wit. He did not just draw upon and spoof his narrative model, he changed its structure in an important way. And it's noteworthy that the change he made echoed his own daily life. For Eugene, you see, was an undersized and fragile-looking child who'd frequently been subject to physical abuse by his physically stronger peers. And yet he'd managed over time to gain their respect by entertaining them with his visual narratives. Eugene was a prosumer well before the term gained some currency, and many other prosumer children can be pointed to who draw prolifically in their own time of their own accord. Of course, much of their work is sentimental, much of it is violent. These are 2 themes that tend to be strongly gendered, and I can illustrate this by reference to 2 other children that I studied. There was Sophie Downey, who copied from picture books of animals, and she loved drawing imaginary girls getting dressed to go to parties. And on the other hand, there was Matthew Davies, who practiced drawing soldiers that would soon go into battle. And sometimes his battle scenes were historical, sometimes they were intergalactic, and sometimes they included Snoopy. Now today, much of this prosumer activity has migrated to the net. It's been commonly believed, and it was also my observation, that most unsolicited drawing, most prosumer drawing by children stopped once they came to adolescence. Prosumer activity ceased. But now, with the new technologies of digital cameras and computers and the internet, instead of ceasing, a wholly new flowering of presumption appears to be occurring. And both children and adolescents are involved. For example, in producing their own YouTube videos, of their own accord, for their own amusement. The Spice Girls and Jessica Simpson songs I discovered are favourites that youngsters perform karaoke style.
You are my fire, the one desire.
Okay, enough. Now, much of the work draws upon other popular technologies, television, movies, and so on. But also one of the chief inspirations is the net itself. Consider, for example, just one example, the phenomenon of the banana song. Do you know the phenomenon of the banana song? Well, okay. Originally a song for children by the American children's singer Rafi, but once it was translated as a flash animation, it became an internet meme. That's a kind of an insider joke that spreads rapidly on the net. It spawned numerous online inventions, and these include further animations. And unfortunately, I don't have the sound here. So you just have to imagine that this is a song for very, very young children. And I'm not going to sing because I can't sing. That would be a terrible thing to do to you. But it goes something like this. Ring, 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 banana phone. Something like that. And just repeat it endlessly. And then there are synchronized snippets to Harry Potter films, which in turn is just one example of synchronized songs to Harry Potter films. And in turn, these are just one example of self-generated parodies of these films. There are also many mashups, as they're called, in which snippets of Harry Potter films are sliced with snippets from Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, or all three, where the heroes of one film will do battle with the villains of another film. Synchronized to totally unrelated music, the effect is often hilarious. And then, many children create mini narratives. For example, using the short comedy sketch as their model, this group of children created a melodrama involving the tragic downfall of a child addicted to birdseed. So, what are we to make of this work as art educators? What the heck has this got to do with art education? Well, I believe that they provide a model for an art education that embraces the visual culture that's come to characterise, even to dominate, everyday life in the 21st century. Visual culture has come to mean many things. But put simply, there's an acknowledgement that, a postmodern acknowledgement, I guess, of the blurring between fine and popular art. There's an acknowledgement that students take pleasure, that there are really good reasons why students are lured to this kind of work. And at the same time, there's criticism of the antisocial and reactionary values and beliefs of a great deal of popular culture. There's a real emphasis on going beyond the text of the image to consider the context in which images are produced, distributed and used, which might include politics, might include economics, certainly includes many social issues. There's a concern with the audience experience. What does an audience actually feel and think? At the same time, there's a concern in a hierarchical society with the social structure. There's a concern with the acquisition of skills, appropriate skills, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and the consideration of the production of images as a form of critical inquiry. These concerns provide a focus with which to consider young prosumption as a model for art education. The specific implications of young prosumption relate first to the characteristics of the image, the characteristics of the images themselves, and also to quite serious issues which they raise. And the image characteristics that I'll talk about in a moment include the need for new basic skills, the nature of creativity,